about the scores we ain't set. We said winner 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ever. Fam over gram, that's a message. We be stacking bread up like it's cheddar. Talking about the scores we ain't set. We said winner 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ever. Dreams over schemes, that's a
we got to get some updated pictures.
I was thinking the same thing when you said that. I was thinking the same thing. We kind of pulled this together so fast. We just went and grabbed whatever the hell we get our hands on.
Literally, we're on episode 10, which is pretty awesome, right? You usually see podcasts spin out.
You know, pretty soon we'll have to take this content and throw it into one of your fancy agents and have it just pull some of the best clips and just let it run on a no topic, just hardcore quotes that might make people curious or piss them off one way or the other. So for this one, your buddy Kevin Perenio, KP, motivated me. And he probably doesn't even know he motivated me. He'll know now. So he did a podcast with someone recently, and towards the end of the podcast, this idea of strategic growth, business development, recruiting came up, and Kevin was talking about the time of year that we're in right now. It's July of 26, second half of July. Definitely the summer. All I got to do is walk outside, and I know you probably got smoke where you are because the Canada
there's
fire.
Literally smoke too.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are literally almost on fire. It's so hot outside. And KP was talking about, actually, he called me out and he said, my buddy Eric Levin would probably disagree with me, but there is a recruiting season, and there, people are generally hunkered down this time of year. Their pipelines are healthy, and so it'll be later in the year after the holidays. Well, he's not wrong. Like, I do disagree with him. He knows I disagree with him, but it's not because he's wrong. It's because the conversation itself is positioned wrong, in my opinion. And so before we get started, because I have opinions, of course, and some of it's backed by data, some of it's just backed by 20 years of working with companies relative to, hey, you're at $1 billion and you want to be at $1.5 billion. How do you get from point A to point B? Well, I'm curious what your experiences have been with people that are on your team, people that you've brought onto the team, people you've seen come and go, maybe calls you're getting, from, and let's be careful here. I'm going to say calls you're getting from recruiters, but let's define what a recruiter is. A recruiter could be a recruiter who is a third party that's sitting in a cubicle dialing all day long. By the way, no shade on that. It's an honest living. And something I did for quite a while. And that's how we came up with this idea for this tech and actually funded it. But a recruiter could also be you. Abdel's a recruiter. KP's a recruiter. Chris Sorensen's a recruiter. Brian View at Mismo is a recruiter. He's making phone calls trying to get people to join Mismo, and he's explaining the value. And, he calls somebody day one and there's no trust and they don't know necessarily who he is, and it takes time. So when you look at that across all of those levers, what's been your experience from a timing perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak personally, right? I just had 3 guys, within my team. We basically sat down and we agreed that we were not best fits, and we wished them eternal success and stuff like that. And we just did a 6-month assessment. I just finished reading Recruiting for Attitude by Mark Murphy. If you haven't read it and you're a, branch manager, area, regional, C-suite, I definitely recommend it. And it talked about, obviously, what's that brown shorts, right? What are you looking to identify as that person who fits that perfect culture and mold for it? And I did a 6-month assessment, usually January to June, based on their numbers, right? Credit and clients and conversations, which we talked about before. And, we have to have some hard combos with guys, right? Hey, man, you want to make $200,000 and you've only made 30 year to date. Now's the time to ramp up. And you don't have that much credit, which means you're not going to have that much closings for the next 2 months unless you start putting maybe shit on social and an agent hits you up because you're top of mind and start getting business. But where's it coming? And, some people, we had honest conversations where it's like, hey, you're just not fitting the culture and we wish you eternal success, right? I think normally, again, traditionally, people want to move at the start of the year or towards the end of the year or whatever it is. I firmly think, and over the last entering my ninth year now, I actually think that people tend to move more now than they actually do, or at least transitioning now until you actually do towards the start of the year, because and I think it also varies, right, Eric? Because it just depends on where you're at, depends on the candidacy of your business. If you're more purchase versus refi, if we did so much goddamn HELOCs and cash out refis in April, May than ever before, and I've always been a heavy purchase driven originator, but people are looking for money to pull, to do their deck, to do their backyard, to do this, whatever, stuff like that. So I think that also varies, because then you might be maybe interest rate more conscious, right? So you might look to move before the start of the year, right? Because that time of the year people hunker down and get more refis and stuff. Um, I don't really think there's a time though, dude. I think every single person is going to vary based on their where they're at in their business, and fortunately where the market is too, right?
So why do you think then, or maybe I should ask you first, do you think there is a perception in this industry? And I think it would translate into any industry where the growth comes generally from people that have transferable books of business. It's relationship-based sales. Mortgage and real estate are two great examples of relationship-based sales, where I've worked really hard to build up relationships with 10 referral partners and a portfolio of past customers who can lead me to friends and family.
Mhm.
And if I make a move, some percentage of that business is going to transfer. There's a transferable book, essentially. In an industry like that, do you think there is a perception that there's a recruiting season, that there's a timing? Right. Okay. And then, so let's just keep talking. What is the perception? The perception is people move when?
Start of the year, or toward the end of the year into the new year.
Right. Okay. Then the perception bleeds into that, because of that perception, which we're going to talk about that in just a second, that there is a recruiting season. That recruiting season is after the summer. Recruiting season is before the spring. So it's sometime after the summer and sometime before the spring. You and I can agree that that is the perception, right? Well, so do me a favor, share this graphic that I was playing around with.
Yeah.
So first of all, shout out to the product geniuses at Model Match for connecting, being able to, connect to my agent in Claude. And by the way, I will openly admit that's where this came from. If you have a problem with that, we can talk about it. But the truth is, it's just pulling the actual unemotional data and answering the question, when do people actually make a move? I can't hover over this and make it dynamic. You might be able to, but if you hover over the blues and the reds, don't worry about it. It's okay. But what this visual is showing is over the last 2 years, this is a 2-year snapshot of the top 5. I think it's actually pulled the top 4 out of the top 20 non-bank mortgage companies. So it is a snapshot. It's not the entire industry, but it's a pretty good snapshot. And what you're actually seeing here is these big spikes in January for quote movement, right? Like you can see that. The blue is the rest of the year. And there's not really big spikes if you look at it. Like, it's relatively consistent. Now there's some the number changes are pretty, can be big, but it's relatively consistent. But when you look at this right away, because of the way publications pick up movement, this is an these are renewals, homie. This is an administrative graph is what this essentially is. The majority of those movements are loan officers that are still at the same company. So this does not really tell a very good story. Now, my little agent here gave me some additional context, and it said, compare it to just sales in general, a referral based sales pipeline versus a cold outreach sales pipeline. And it's not the same, but anecdotally, it's a good statistic to look at, which is, statistics show that a referral based connection moves through the pipeline a lot faster than a cold outreach method. Now, this isn't taking into account, it is taking account to conversion, but we're not giving it full conversion metrics. We're just saying for those that close, how long does it take if it's referral based versus cold outreach, which then starts us, okay, you can kill this graphic,
Yep.
which then starts us down the path of, is it, when we say recruiting, we got to redefine that, man, because it's creating an excuse. The excuse is I can put my head down, do the work that's in front of me right now, enjoy the beach time and the lake time and the grilling out with Abdel and all the, the referral partners that hang out and eat the food off of Abdel's, newly renovated backyard.
Literally.
But I don't really need to worry about recruiting right now because it's not recruiting season. I mean, that's what everybody tells me, and that's what the statistics are. So the redefinition and the reframing is really kind of around like that difference between outreach and conversion. So when I say recruiting or business development, we got to start somewhere, right? So are we stop talking about recruiting season? That might be conversion season, but the graphic I just showed you kind of throws shade on this whole idea of conversion season as well. So if let's look at it from a different perspective. If that LO that said they want to make a certain amount of money, which if we back into it, what you're going to do is you're going to say, remove the money. That's your motivator. But let's talk about the process. The process is right now you only have 3 referral partners and you don't have much of a past portfolio. So to be able to increase and get to a number that's going to lead you to the compensation that you want to make, we have to increase your production by 50%. Well, the first thing we need to do is increase the amount of referral partners you have that will start to send you loans. Would you tell that person, hey, don't worry, it's the summertime, you might as well do nothing right now, just wait until November?
No, absolutely not.
Right. I mean, so what do? You begin the process, understanding that what you can't guarantee that loan officer is how long it's going to take for the, number one, the new referral partner to give you a shot, and then that shot to turn into a loan.
Exactly.
So how do you manage that conversation?
Yeah. And I think also, obviously shifting in our business, right? When you started out as an originator, you're always looking to recruit consumers, right? Then you became a sales manager and you were looking to recruit loan officers because you got an override. And then you became a branch manager and you recruited it obviously to scale your business, right? I think we're always recruiting though. And and I always take this from you when we first met in Nashville, just fucking 5 years ago, was we were always business developing, right? Like I go to BNI, 7 o'clock in the morning, 45 minutes away from my house every Friday, right? Now, we wake up early, so it's not a big deal, but I go to business develop with relationships from other referral partners. Now, what I've had success with is...
Okay, can you stop for just a second? I'm sorry. Yeah. I have to interrupt you from time to time because I'm a prick. So you didn't call that recruiting. No, you called it business development. And maybe part of this conversation should be, until we rewire our brains to understand that the motion that you just described is no different than the motion necessary to add someone new that meets your criteria, comes for all the right reasons, generates the revenue that was expected or more. That is the same thing as what you just described. And you didn't say, I don't go to those meetings in the summer. You don't stop them in the summer. So anyway, I just wanted to say that, and I hope I didn't totally break your train of thought, but no. I think that's a huge takeaway here, is that one of the reasons you're successful and the top 10% are that successful is their brains don't re-trigger based upon, I need to grow my team versus I need to go get one more loan.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a recruiting call this morning, right? 9 a.m. Or I should say a business development call. And this is my 3rd conversation with that individual, right? And I've also learned that when you are doing these business development calls for an originator, you should also simultaneously expose them to other facets in your business and other departments that is most important to them, right? Mm-hmm. So for this particular loan officer, it was operations, right? Which now your operations and systems. And I'm like, buddy, you're talking to me here. Like those are the 2 things that I
robot
sleep, breathe, right? And he was going over how he was, chasing after documents and chasing after pay stubs. And obviously I'm going to be the, facetious prick and be like, wait, who's doing that? And he's like, him. And I'm like, wait, aren't you a loan officer? He goes, yeah. I'm like, yeah, there's no freaking way on God's green earth would I ever have you chasing a consumer's bank statements and actually getting. I might tell you to nudge a consumer because ops has tried and LOA has tried, but I would never have you individually calling the consumer and doing that stuff because that's not an income generating activity. And your job is to bring income to yourself in the branch.
Right.
And we went over systems and operations and stuff. But what I've also noticed, Eric, and obviously with our relationship, is this stuff takes freaking time, dude. So I also think that by the time you maybe talk to an originator, maybe the stat is somewhat real. That by the time you talk to them in say June, July, when they realize that holy shit, I told you I wanted to make 200 and I've only made 30. Yeah, but I can't leave, and I got a couple files, and I don't want to get dicked on them, and I don't want to lose them. And there's transitional bonuses and this, and we've talked about sign-on bonuses before. It is kind of a redundant process. And where I've learned over the years, and as we continue learning, is you do have to stay top of mind with that same originator the whole time, right? Because you could catch them at a bad time, and they may have just closed a month where they only got their draw and they didn't get actually paid, and now they're pissed, and their branch manager didn't answer their call at 8:50 p.m. and now they're like, this guy's only up for themselves. So I do think that a little bit of both, but measuring that conversion has been critical too, because I also know we were just talking about with the new model match MCP or the new model match UI, right? We would do it the traditional way, right? Where you went into the, I think you called it legacy, right? The legacy model match, the original one, and you just pull the list of loan officers and you smiled and dialed because that's what we all do. We're all in sales, just like when we pull a list of consumers who need to refi. But what you guys have done with the new platform is you've really concised it, right? And I love it because having obviously, our daughter and the admins who are making the calls, she's like, dude, I like made 300 phone calls and I haven't really gotten a hold of people, or people have told me to go kick rocks. So again, there's it's a cold outreach.
Sure. Yeah.
So it was funny. I was I think Thomas tagged me in something in Model Man. And I had clicked on it, and it took me into like a little bit of a rabbit hole of like the black interface, right? So I clicked it, and then I'm on the road driving, not the safest, well, the car's driving, and I start playing around with it, and then I'm like, okay, so we're gonna target, real estate agents, and then I look to the right, and I've always filtered, but it was usually always volume and units, right? And I'm gonna get to the point. There's volume and units. And I was like, all right, an agent who did a minimum of 2 million and a maximum of, say, 30 million, and they did a minimum of 10 units and a maximum of 30. And I kind of always stopped there, right? Mm-hmm. And then I started really scrolling down, and I'm like, holy shit, I can actually hit more buyer side. I can actually has phone number, email, social. Great. So now I have something for our admins or my daughter to be able to actually go and become friends and create a synergy relationship and stuff like that. And then I could have another teammate who's experienced, who can have those conversations and stuff like that. I think it comes into the recruiting too, because where I failed, and I'm sure most of us maybe have done in the past, and if you haven't, fucking awesome, is we went and just threw a wide net into the ocean rather than going to like the one side of the ocean where we've realized like, hey, these people fit my pond, they fit my culture, they fit, whether it's a real estate agent, whether I wish we could this probably would be totally against, ECOA or whatever act. But, if they're like over a certain age, you could like be like, nope, don't want them. And I'm sure we could probably pull that, because that would be great, because I might go one way or another. But it allowed me to take a list of like 9,000 to like 109. Right. And I'm like, okay, that's great. And then I could build relationships. And since we started doing that, I'm having more conversations, right, with people, and having better conversations with both from a prospecting perspective for a real estate agent, or an actual conversation with an originator, where it wasn't like fuck off in the beginning because I'm doing 30 million, or agents, frankly, right? I do more listings. Of course you do, dude. You're a beast. That's your goal. I know. You're a 70% listing agent, and you just closed 1, 2, 3 Main Street, 4, 5, 6 Main Street, 7, 8, 9 Main Street. So these conversations are more purposeful, but it takes away that recruiting myth, right? Where I'm not also looking to recruit you. We're trying to develop business together in a fashion to be able to show you what we have to bring to the table.
And honestly, the agent to originator conversation is a little different than the manager to the originator conversation. But where it's not different is the process from the initial outreach to the conversion. So for the agent, it's the conversion of the first loan that you close together. With the loan officer or the branch or the acquisition, it's when they join the company. But all of that converts because of the trust that there's going to be value, the trust that you're doing something for me, you're creating an efficiency, I have more time to sell. Maybe there's a product that I don't currently have that I really need. Maybe you're just a better leader. Maybe you're going to teach me how to get more value out of technology than I currently have, and that's going to help me drive more opportunity. But going back to something you said earlier, which is 100% fair, and that is there may still be a conversion bias because, hey, Abdel, look, man, my pipeline's really big right now, and it's just not a good time for me to make the move. However, I can see that this is something we need to really continue to investigate. Well, if that person joins you in February, you actually closed them in August. You closed them in July. Now I could argue that also, but you know what I mean when I say that. So this goes back again to the idea of you cannot time the process of business development. I'm going to try to stop saying recruiting, but I think we sort of have to so that people know what we're talking about. So share the screen again. I want to show something else, and hopefully the proper graphic comes up.
Yeah.
It should be a new one. Okay. So here is a deeper dive into what we were looking at before. You're taking those same companies, top IMBs, and you're looking at the last 2 years. And what you find is that August is right behind February on movement.
Yeah. And
then June is number 5. So out of the top 5 months, you have August and June. So even anecdotally, when you and I, you can scratch that graphic. Even anecdotally, when you and I are talking about, maybe it is better for you to move after you close out your pipeline. Well, the data is not actually saying that. That's not actually what the data is showing. So all of this to say, if you're thinking that there's a recruiting season, you need to redefine what it is you're saying. Maybe you're talking about conversion, but you know how in psychology, there's that concept of if you say it, you become it, right?
Yeah.
Something along the, and I used to really think that was a bunch of hoo-ha, and I hated that crap. But the older I get, I start to realize it is kind of true, man. Like it is. I know the way you start every day, the way I start every day. If I don't start my day that particular way, I am off track. And that's no different than me looking in the mirror and saying, you suck, you're a failure, you're not going to do anything, whatever. But in business development, there is this wild balance between the emotional and what your desired outcome is. I think of it like motivation. What is the motivation? Well, it takes time to figure out what somebody's motivation is, and for them to be honest with you about what their motivation is, and for them to even know what their own damn motivation is. In the midst of that, though, there's a lot of emotion. And I say all that to say, if you go into it with your brain thinking that there's a recruiting or a business development season, you are setting yourself up for failure, and you're making an excuse. And the excuse is, I don't need to do anything right now because it's the spring and summer. I'll worry about that once we get past the summer. Not true. The data proves it out. KP was not wrong with what he said, because he was talking more about what he believes in recruiting statistics that he may be pulling from PRMG, and he can see, hey, I know when people are joining. But if you're including January, it's an administrative number. Everything else shows me pulling from actual data, coming from Model Match, coming from public record, shows that that's not the truth. So advice to anybody listening, stop saying it. Because number one, you either need to redefine it, or you're just creating an excuse for yourself.
100%. I love it. Yeah, I can't say it any better. And I think to the point, like I said, it does take the time. So the lag, the numbers, right? These are probably pulling from when the NMLS reports the sponsor transfer or transfer with that. So I think it's staying at it, always doing business development, right? For loan officers, referral partners, and consumers. And I think if you practice that candidacy throughout, especially with just how crazy the market is at the same time, I think everybody's in a different part of their business, right? Especially depending on what side of the East Coast or West Coast that you are as well. So,
yeah, last thing I'll say, anybody watching this, if we'll give a little shout out to Housing Wire and Clayton Collins and my buddy Abdel. If you're not doing anything, what is it? August 11th, August 12th,
August 11th.
August 11th, in Dallas, Texas, Housing Wire AI Summit. Abdel is going to be on stage preaching and giving everybody literally things that you can walk away with to go drive more business through better use of technology. Go to Housing Wire's website, go sign up for that AI Summit. And if you are, come find us. I'll be there. Abdel will be there. I would love to hang out. So, all right, good stuff, Abdel. Stop calling it recruiting season. Doesn't exist.
Let's go.